Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 454th meeting since we started in February 2009. This actually started in Chicago in 1951 for the purpose of solving all the world's problems. They're still working at it.
Yeah.
They've had over 3,000 speakers. We've had, this today is 454 speakers we've had. We put a speaker on every week at every subject. They are required to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give them an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter. We listen only one fool at a time. It's one of our rules. Then we have question and answers from the audience of the speaker, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everyone in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium to respond to the speaker said for or against. The speaker gets the last word. It's comment, the comment, close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we introduce our speaker, it's time for announcements. Anybody have any announcements they want to make? Now's the time to do it. Any announcements? I see someone might have an announcement here.
Yeah. I gotta figure out.
Who's coming up here to make his announcement?
All right, let's see. There we go. All right, Philosophers Forum is meeting 9th, which is this coming Tuesday. And the subject is the fragility of life and the meaninglessness of existence. So if you want to understand how meaningless your existence is, come to Philosophers Forum. This is going to be the last meeting we have at El Phoenix because El Phoenix is closing. So we've got to figure out where we're going to meet next, and that's going to be a pretty interesting little project. But anyway,
fragility of venues.
Yeah, well, that's always an issue. But we've been there for 10 years. It was great. Hopefully we find another place like that. Anyway, $5.
Maybe you want to come here.
Hey, yeah, it's cheaper here.
Yeah, you get the whole place. You use this whole thing.
But they have such a big group.
Yeah, no, but they can use that room too. Use the whole thing. And we got a PA system if you want to use it. It's here. Everything's handy. So this is not too bad of a stretch.
You can listen to them, right? Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I would be my gift.
Yeah, so you can have the Philosophers Forum hosted by College of Complexes.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's funny.
Well, we'll find a place.
All right.
I'm sure we'll find a place.
Okay, if you don't worry.
You got a whole list of
Yeah.
things there.
Okay, now, one announcement. Jan and I talked to Jim Peeler today, just to say hello, see how he's doing. He's in Allen, Texas. He finally released him from the home he was in. He's living with his son now. He's, what did he say, he lost 40 pounds?
Lost 40 pounds.
He lost 40 pounds. He was pretty thin to begin with, so anyway, he's got to regain his strength. And we said, when do you think we'll see you again? He said, well, maybe a month or two, so we'll see. So, yeah, anyway, he's at his son's house in Allen, Texas. I got his number if anybody wants to call him. If you want it, let me know. You do? All right. Well, I'll announce the number here.
Well, let me get a pen.
Okay, get your pen.
Send out his email to us.
Here, I got that too. All right, you got a pen? Everybody got a pen? Stand by. I'll give it to you.
Okay, I got a pen.
His mobile number is 214-532-4452. Say that again, 214-532-4452. You got that?
One more time.
214-532-4452. And his his email, for what it's worth, is Jim B. Peeler, JIMBPEELER, @gmail.com. Jim B. Peeler @gmail.com. That's his email address.
Is that lowercase?
Yeah, it's all lowercase. Jim B. Peeler @gmail.com. Jim B. Peeler. Yeah. PEELER.
What's the B stand for?
I don't know. I really don't. It's his middle name, I think, but what it stands for. Starts with a B. So it might be, who knows what it is. He would know, you'll have to ask him. Anyway, Jim Gatewood, he's our speaker tonight. He's gonna talk about the impact of Clyde, Barrow, Bonnie Parker, and her baby daughter. Jim Gatewood is a best-selling author and a Dallas history laureate who teaches Dallas history class at Richmond College to discuss his latest book, Bonnie Parker's Baby Daughter and the Devil's Back Porch. There we are. I got it. He's coming up here and telling the story of Lyons alias Teddy Williams in Dallas, a Dallas gambler who was Bonnie Parker's sponsor. Shortly after her 16th birthday, Bonnie married her high school sweetheart, Roy Thornton. She was disappointed when her doctor told her she was not genetically capable of having children. Roy began drinking, disappearing for weeks at a time until one day he did not return. She was living with a friend when she went to her first date with Clyde. They became inseparable. Then at the age of 22 months after Clyde had been incarcerated, Bonnie realized she was pregnant. When she went to the Huntsville prison to give Clyde the news, they fought and Bonnie left in tears. Broken-hearted, Bonnie never responded to Clyde's jailhouse letters. Jim points out that after 2 years behind bars, Clyde received an unexpected parole. Bonnie felt renewed hope, and when she reunited with Clyde at Teddy's apartment, her sugar daddy had returned, and a future of riches were within her grasp. He argues that Clyde Barrow was without a doubt the most undetermined desperado of the Great Depression. The outlaw couple had planned to buy Louisiana timberland that would allow them to retire in luxury. The Dallas County Sheriff, however, had other plans. Jim engages and carries us back over time, forgotten places, and reveals the secrets of hidden away in the dusty attics of time. He will also bring books he authored for those who wish to purchase same. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Jim Gatewood.
In this book, we described the Devil's Back Porch. And I was very pleased when Netflix came on with a film called The Highwayman. And The Highwayman, of course, was Clyde Barrow. And the film centered around the Texas Ranger Frank Hamer. And when he came to Dallas, the sheriff's department told him, we'll have to take a walk on the Devil's Back Porch. The Devil's Back Porch is a 16 square mile area. And when you cross the Continental Street Bridge, that was back in the time of Bonnie and Clyde, was not in the city of Dallas, it was county. Now there were only 34 sheriffs and over 5,000 miles of Dallas County patrol, so they didn't have enough men to do much there in the Devil's Back Porch. In fact, when they had a new recruit, they would take him for a walk on the Devil's Back Porch. Because this was a very tough part of town, and two lawmen alone in that town, it wasn't if they were going to be involved in a fight, it just was when. That's when they would determine what kind of man they had walking beside them. If he turned and ran, he got a desk job. If he stayed and fought and he was one of the boys, they put a pistol on his hip, and he was one of them. Now that's the Devil's Back Porch, and I was very pleased when in this film about the Highwayman, they referred to West Dallas as the Devil's Back Porch. And they had scenes that were pretty well in line with what happened because there were no rules. You could live in a cardboard box if you wanted to. And the city of Dallas dumped their trash just across the Continental Street Bridge there, it piled up. The kids never had enough to eat. There was always a gang of kids going through that trash trying to find something to eat. This, of course, was during the Depression in a very tough part of our town. Now, getting to Bonnie Parker, who the book is about. She was born in Rowena, Texas. Rowena, Texas is about 60 miles south of Abilene. It is in the heart of West Texas. Nothing grows out there except cactus, jackrabbits, quail, and of course a bunch of rattlesnakes. But her father was a masonry contractor. He was working on a commercial job there in Rowena. The rest of the men went to lunch. He got up on the scaffold and was doing what they call pointing up the work. If there was any mortar joints that needed to be wiped or bricks that needed to be squared a little bit, that's what he was there for. When the men came back from lunch, they found Father Parker on the ground. He had fallen and broken his neck. Bonnie was 4 years old. She had a younger brother they called Buster and a younger sister called Billie Jean. Now, the family was destitute, but the First Baptist Church there in Rowena made up some money enough to buy them a ticket to get to Dallas and eat lunch. So they're on the train. It's in the month of February, and while they're on that train, a blue norther blows through, and it's sleeting and extremely cold. The wind's blowing. When they get to Dallas, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. It's dark, cold, sleet coming in there. Bonnie said she remembered how warm it was when they walked by the boiler of that locomotive. Of course, that's back when they had the steam locomotives. Now, her grandfather was there to pick her up. Her grandfather worked for the Portland Trinity Cement Company. They lived in an area called Cement City. All the houses were made of concrete. The only thing that was wood was the roof. And the employees lived there, and what determined your rent was the number of rooms in your house. You paid $2 a month for each room. And the Parker family, Grandfather Parker, had 2 rooms. So we've got 2 rooms. We've got grandmother and grandfather, and the mother, the widowed mother, and 3 children. Now the mother goes to work for Higginbotham Pearlstone downtown Dallas making coveralls. She gets paid 25 cents for each pair of coveralls she is able to produce during the day. The maximum anyone could produce was 3 pair of coveralls, 75 cents. And of course, when she started, she couldn't, but she eventually did. Now, it was necessary for her to work, so there was enough money to put food on the table for all the kids. And in the meantime, Grandmother Parker was babysitting with 3 additional kids, so she's got 6 kids. And she's old and she's tired. She takes naps every now and then. Bonnie was hyper, to say the least. She was always the instigator of dividing 2 against 4 or 3 against 3, and there was always some kind of a row. Twice she set the house on fire playing with matches in the closet, and 3 different times she fell asleep and was hard to wake up because she got into the family's wine. By the time she went to school, she was an excellent student. But when she was in the 7th grade, she broke a boy's nose. She hit him because she accused him of stealing her pencil. And the boy took the pencil and broke it in half and gave her the half with the eraser. When he did, she smacked him. And she got expelled from school for 2 weeks because of that. Now, when they had football games, Bonnie would get her friends together and go over and sit on the other side and cheer for her team. And it wasn't if they had a fight, it was just win. She was always the instigator and in trouble. Now, there's a story that came to me after the book. This friend of mine told me that his grandfather was with the Dallas Police Department at that time. And this Model T Ford comes roaring through town, and they got some kids in the back end of a truck type deal there. His grandfather's on a motorcycle. He pulled him over because they'd run 2 or 3 stop signs and a red light. When he pulls him over, this girl in the back of the truck comes up with a pistol and points it at him and tells him to mind his own business. He reaches up and grabs the pistol, takes it away from her, and puts them all in jail. And then, of course, Grandfather and Grandmother Parker had to come down and get her out of jail. But this is the kind of girl we're dealing with. Now, when she was a senior in high school, she fell in love with a boy named Roy Thornton. And she had his name tattooed on her panty line. Now, I imagine that either amused or disturbed Clyde, I don't know. But anyway, so many of the stories about Bonnie and Clyde are about this illicit love affair. But let me assure you, there's more to it than that, because there are 14 murders that are laid right at their feet. When Bonnie was killed, she had 3 diamond rings on her hand. Those diamond rings came from the jewelry shop in San Antonio, Texas, where both the husband and the wife were killed. Now, we have to introduce a new character into the Bonnie and Clyde fable. His name is Fay Lyons. Fay Lyons was raised in Rose Hill, Texas. When you go from Dallas to Rockwall, there'll be a sign on the left-hand side of the road that points to Rose Hill, Texas. When Fay was growing up, it had a population of 85. Everybody was educated in a one-room schoolhouse. A fellow by the name of Ben Tysinger was principal of the school. He really liked Fay. Fay was an excellent student. And Ben Tysinger predicted that Fay Lyons would go very far. Now, when Fay was 17 years old, he graduated from high school. And he told his father, he said, "I'm not going to stay on the farm." He said, "Every spring it rains and we're mudlocked because the roads were nothing but wagon trails. There was no gravel or asphalt at that time, and when it rained, they just got impassable." So Fay is telling his dad, every spring we're mudlocked for at least 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm just not going to sit here and be in that position anymore. I'm going to go into town and get some more schooling. Now, Fay was a tall boy. He was a little over 6 feet tall, lanky, and he played first base on the Rose Hill baseball team. And when he came to town, he started playing first base for a semi-pro team called the Fair Park Panthers. Now, the Fair Park Panthers were managed by a fellow by the name of Clarence Jones. Clarence Jones was a gambler. He played, for instance, he played the Kraft Foods team up in Denison. He played the Morton Salt Company down in Grand Saline. He played the Dallas Colgate Palmolive team. And he would always be in the position where he would bring in a ringer. By that, there was a professional pitcher who was an alcoholic who wasn't allowed to play in the professional league, but he'd sober up long enough to play for Clarence Jones, and of course Clarence, with this inside information, would bet heavy on his team. Clarence also played a lot of poker, and he was always laughing about how much money and telling Fay about the poker game he was in, and Fay said, "Well, would you teach me how to play poker?" Clarence said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "I've got 2 partners, I'll have to talk to them." Now, these 2 partners are SMU law school graduates. They're attorneys. And what these 3 men have done, they're all gamblers. They have gone to every drugstore, every place in Dallas County that sells playing cards. And they bought up the supply of cards. Now, in the meantime, they went to an underground printer and they had their own bicycle cards printed that only they could read. So they buy up all the existing cards in Dallas County, and then in turn, they say to the proprietor, "Now, at a very discounted price, you can have our cards." And of course, what developed over a period of time, no matter where you were in Dallas, when you called for a new deck of cards, you got those counterfeit cards that only Fay and his 2 partners could read. Now the question is whether or not to let Fay Lyons in on this. Well, Fay Lyons was a very polite, accommodating young man. So they decided that they would. Fay told me, he said, "Jim, it took me a couple of days, but he said after 2 days of studying those cards, he said I could read them as far as 4 feet away." So he started playing poker. He got a reputation of being the youngest poker player around, with nerves of steel, never showing any emotion and always coming away a winner. Of course he came away a winner, he could see what the other guy was holding. Well, as time went by, these two attorneys were invited to join the Italian Club. Now, the Italian Club still exists today. In those days, they had their own building. And they said that the ladies would get up early in the morning and start cooking. And by noon, they'd have all sorts of pastas and barbecue and, of course, desserts and just a fabulous meal. And this is for professional men who remember the club. Doctors, attorneys, engineers, dentists, people who could afford and were well educated. And then after the meals and everything was cleared away, there would be 4 or 5 tables of poker. And of course, the two attorneys and Clarence Jones and now Fay Lyons are playing. They see to it that they don't play at the same table. And they're making money. They're just pulling it out of there. They said that everything was fine except there was this one fellow that kept coming over and he would sit down beside him. He said, I would move from one table to the other. He'd come over and tap the guy on the shoulder and ask him to move so he could sit down beside me again. I couldn't get away from him. And he said the problem was that he would drink and he'd bet on every hand, regardless of what he held. And of course you can't do that playing poker. You're going to run out of money. And he did. But when this gentleman ran out of money, he would reach over and take chips out of Fay's stack. Well, Fay said he was my elder. I was the youngest guy there. I hated to call an elder down in front of the group. He said I didn't know how I was going to handle it. And he said, in the meantime, Fay had come into town. He didn't have a job. He enrolled in Drawn's Business College and took accounting. And he went to visit his brother, who was a jailer at the Dallas County Jail. While he was there visiting his brother, Hal Hood came in, and he was fussing and raising Cain because the previous sheriff, Schuyler Marshall, had left the books in a terrible disorder, and they were trying to straighten them out. Well, Fay showed the sheriff, Hal Hood, how double entry bookkeeping worked. The sheriff was really impressed. This is exactly what he needed. So they gave Fay a job. Fay got a job as the accountant for the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. And he was straightening out the books. Now, while he was there, he met a very personable young man who played the saxophone. He was a trustee there in jail. Now, a trustee is a prisoner whom the officers trust because he's not in there for any malicious meanness. He just stole something. Well, Fay and this young man become good friends. And in the meantime, Bonnie Parker is working as a dime a dance girl. And Fay meets her at one of these dances, and then she shows up. She's a waitress at the Mecca Cafe. And the Mecca Cafe is only right about a half a block and right across the street from the Dallas County Jail. So Fay's over there drinking coffee, and here's this girl he'd been dancing with. And they become an item. They're dating each other. In the meantime, Fay's made enough money, he's driving a brand new Packard automobile. And Bonnie thinks that's really great because at this dime a dance, the way that works, the boys have to play a dime to dance with the girls. And of course, the more dances the girls can sell, the more dimes they make. They get a percentage. Well, these girls are telling these boys what they want to hear. And they're making dates with them, after the dance is over. So when the dance is over, here's all these panting young men waiting for their dates, and the girls rush right by them outside where taxi cabs are waiting. Well, it was a little different with Fay because he and Bonnie were an item, and of course she was promising other boys, but she always left with Fay. So they're an item. Now, Bonnie is out one bright April morning when the sun's shining, and she's taking a break because she smokes a cigarettes. And she sees this young man down there. At this time, there are very few automobiles, and there's a lot of horses. And he's sleeping up the streets. And he's a good-looking young fella, and she whistles and waves at him, and he waves back. And she watches, and he goes back in the jail when he finishes work, so she asks Fay who he is. Well, Fay knows who he is. His name is Clyde Barrow. He's in the Dallas County Jail as a trustee. He hasn't done anything really mean yet. In fact, they asked him, he said, "Clyde, what are you in jail for?" He said, "Well," said, "I borrowed a neighbor's car and I just didn't get it back in time." So he's about to get out of jail. He's been in there for 2 months, and that was his sentence. And they asked him, said, "Clyde, what are you going to do? You going to go back to school, or what are your plans?" Clyde said, "No, I'm not going back to school." Said, "I got a 5th grade education." Said, that's all you need nowadays." Said, "A fella here by the name of Bill Decker has helped me, and he's got me a job over at the Brown Candy Company. I'm probably going to work for them." So Faye said, "Well, you're going to go back home and live with your folks?" He said, "No." He said, "I'm not going back there." He said, "Every time I'm around Mama," said, "she grabs the Bible and she wants to read something to me, and I'm tired of hearing that. I don't know right now just exactly where I'm going to live." So Faye, in the meantime, when he came to town, Clarence Jones, the gambler, owned 3 apartment houses on San Jacinto Street. So Faye is talking to him. He's, of course, been playing baseball for him, and he tells him he's coming into town. And Clarence says, "Well, Faye," he said, I have a job for you. I have these 3 apartment houses, and what I'd like to do is make you the manager. Now, if you manage these apartment houses, what that means is you collect all the rent. Said if there's some plumbing or painting or some repair that needs to be made, you have it done. Just keep the receipts, and we'll settle up on the money. In return, I'll furnish you with an apartment. You'll have a place to stay." And there was a restaurant there close, Jack Levin's Cafe. And Clarence took Faye over there, and he called Jack over. He said, "Jack," said, "Faye Lyons works for me." He said, "Anytime he's in here and he orders something to eat, just put it on a ticket, and I'll settle up with you every week." Faye said, "Clarence Jones kind of adopted me." And then I heard about him playing poker, and of course asked him to show me, and he did. So Faye is living in these apartments, and he told Clyde, he said, "Well, Clyde, if you want to," he said, "you can come in and be my roommate until you get things sorted out and figure what you want to do." So Clyde Barrow, when he got out of jail, moved in and was a roommate at Faye Lyons. Now everything's going along pretty smooth, but one afternoon, Faye comes home, and there's his roommate, Clyde Barrow, in the kitchen with Bonnie Parker, his girlfriend. Well, he comes in, and Bonnie looks up and says, "Hey, look here, they've got a map." Said, "There's this little town right outside of Waco, and they've got a bank. Clyde and I are going to go down there and rob that bank, and we want you to drive the car for us." Faye said, "No." He said, "I'm making good money working for the county and playing poker, and you're not going to get over $500 or $600 out of that bank, and by the time we split that 3 ways," said, "the risk to reward ratio is just not high enough for me to get involved. And Clyde, if you're going to be involved in that kind of mischief," he said, "I want you to live somewhere else." He said, "I've got a good reputation, and it wouldn't do for it to turn up that my roommate was involved in a bank robbery." Well, Bonnie got all upset and very profanely told Faye what he could do, and the 2 of them left, and of course, Faye didn't see him for quite some time. Now, in the meantime, you know what happened. They're robbing banks. And there's one story that needs to be repeated. They were robbing banks, and they put together a gang. The first time they put their gang together, they were all camped out up at Lake Dallas, just around Louisville there. And they were talking things over, and they had their guns and everything. And they decided they'd rob the bank there in Louisville. Well, Raymond Hamilton, who later on made public enemy #1, was a young member of that gang. And he was a little bit afraid of being involved in that, but they persuaded him that he should drive the car. So Raymond Hamilton did drive the car. They hit the bank at Louisville, and his part was $240. Well, Raymond got so excited about that, he wanted to go rob another bank right then. But of course they didn't. They had their plans. And Raymond Hamilton started robbing banks all by himself. And of course, he got caught and put in Huntsville prison. Well, Clyde had been in Huntsville prison and he was badly mistreated. And he swore he would never go back there again. And Bonnie told Clyde, he said, Clyde, we have got to go down there and break Raymond out. He's one of our gang. We got to take care of him. Clyde said, no, said, I'm not going to get involved in that. Said, I know all the guards, and said, they're mean, they're all armed, and said, there's no way we can get it done. Bonnie said, Clyde, if you don't break Raymond Hamilton out of Huntsville prison, we're quits. You see, Bonnie was a control freak. In fact, she ran the gang once they got going. So anyway, Clyde agreed to go hit the Huntsville prison. They smuggled some guns into them, 245 automatics. 2 guards were killed in the shootout. And they not only got Raymond Hamilton out, they got another boy named Henry Methvin, who wasn't even supposed to be involved, but he ran with Raymond. And then they got a couple other guys, and they had their 34 Ford just packed full of humanity. But they got away. And they used a machine gun and made a lot of racket, and then of course the men on the ground had, the convicts on the ground had those 245 automatics, and 2 guards were killed. But they're back in business now, and Raymond splits off again by himself and starts holding up banks. Well, this really irritates Clyde. So he decides, they know that Raymond's safe house, he has a uncle that lives out close to Grapevine, Texas. And they know that Raymond will hit that bank and then he'll go to his uncle's house, safe house, till things cool off. So Bonnie and Clyde and Henry Methvin, one of the boys that was broke out of jail, set up an ambush for him. And they're gonna ambush Raymond. They've been fussing back and forth. They've decided they're gonna kill Raymond and take the money that he got from the bank close to Waco. So they're waiting there. Bonnie's in the back seat. She's drinking 4 Roses whiskey. She got pint bottles of 4 Roses whiskey and 6-pack of Cokes. The 2 men up front weren't drinking anything. They're waiting for Raymond. 3 state highway patrol come along on motorcycles. And one of the motorcycles is not running good. And they decide that they'll go in and they see this car parked there under the shade of a big oak tree. They say, well, maybe those folks need some help. We'll go see about it. Well, one guy with his bad running motorcycle says, I'm going to have to take this on into the shop. I don't know when it's going to stop or if I could start it again. So he goes on. Now, in the meantime, about, 600 yards away is a farmhouse. And it's Easter Sunday. And they've had their Sunday meal. And Mom and Pop are sitting out on the front porch rocking. And Pop goes to sleep. Mom's watching the car down there and she sees those youngsters in there. And she tells Pop, says, go down there and see if those kids would like to use the telephone. Maybe their car's broke down and won't work. Pop says, okay, and then he goes back to sleep. Well, about 10 minutes or so later, Mom elbows him real good and says, Henry, get up and go see about those kids. So he starts walking down towards the car. He gets to within about 20 yards of that car when those 2 motorcycle troopers come up and they get off their motorcycles. Meanwhile, inside that coupe, Clyde says to Henry Methvin, let's take them. And they're both holding Thompson submachine guns. They step out of the car, and as those 2 troopers get off their bikes, they cut them down. The farmer who has witnessed this is just froze. He's horrified to see this terrible thing happen. The back door of the Ford sedan swings open. Bonnie gets out. She's got a 20-gauge shotgun. It was made special for her. It's cut down so it fits her real good. One of the troopers is groveling there. He's in pain. She goes up and takes her foot, turns him over, and shoots him in the face with that shotgun. Then she goes and turns the other trooper over and shoots him in the face with the shotgun. She hollers back at Clyde. Clyde, did you see that law's head bounce when that buckshot hit him? The farmer gave this testimony in court. That's what he saw. That, of course, is the most graphic story of my pork that there is. Well, of course, they left, and they got away, and they continued their bank robbing. And Bonnie figured out real soon if she was going to be involved, what she'd do, she would tuck her hair up under the fedora. She'd put on sunglasses, she'd smoke a cigar, and dress like a man, and carry a Thompson submachine gun. Now, when she went into the bank, nobody was trying to figure out whether she was a boy or a girl. They was watching the muzzle of that machine gun. So they got away with a lot more money than what was suspected. They were killed on May 25th, 1934. On May 21st, 1934, Clyde Barrow drove up in front of his mom and pop's gas station on Singleton Boulevard, called his dad over, Henry Barrow, and showed his dad $17,000 that he had in a satchel. Said, Bonnie and I have been saving up. We're going to buy 2,000 acres of land in Gibson, Louisiana that's got timber on it. And we'll harvest that timber every year and be able to retire where nobody knows us and we can live out the rest of our life. We've got a baby daughter here in Dallas. And Bonnie had that child, incidentally. And we've got a baby daughter here in Dallas. We're going to pick her up. And Bonnie's expecting again. There was a Sunday dinner down there at the Gibson, Louisiana Methven home. And one of the Methven girls announced that she was expecting. And Bonnie piped up and said, well, yes, I'm going to have a child in September of this year. But of course, in the meantime, they were ambushed by the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and Texas Ranger Frank Hamer and killed. Now, Bill Decker was in charge of the office here in Dallas, and Ted Hinton, a Dallas County deputy sheriff, called in, and Decker answered the phone, and Hinton told him, he said, well, we got them. He said, they're both dead. And Decker, of course, knew Henry Barrow, the father. He and Fay Lyons were good friends, so he asked Fay, he said, Fay, would you go out and tell the Barrow family what's happened? Fay said, I drove out there, and as I drove up, said Henry Barrow was outside putting gasoline in a car. Said I waited until the car left. It was just the two of us. I went up and I put my hand on the old man's shoulder, and I told him that his son had been killed down in Gibson, Louisiana. Said Henry just hung his head and said, but we knew that was coming, we just didn't know when. Said, Fay, I want you to go inside with me, because when Cummy, that's Clyde's mother, when Cummy gets this news, she's probably going to scream and faint. Well, they went inside, and Fay told Cummy what had happened, and she screamed and fainted, and they put a flour sack under her head and let her lay there until she came back around. Then Henry Barrow, Clyde's father, asked Fay, he said, now Fay, he said, the only transportation I've got is a very old truck, and it probably wouldn't go 20 miles before it would break down. Could you possibly get me a ride down to Gibson, Louisiana, so I can be with my boy? Well, of course, Fay had a brand new Packard automobile, and he said, sure. Henry said, I'll take you down there. So Fay Lyons drove Henry Barrow to Gibson, Louisiana, and Henry rode back to Dallas with his son in an ambulance that carried him back. Now, after they were buried and things settled down, Clyde Barrow and Fay Lyons, well, let me put it this way. Clyde Barrow was a good friend. Fay Lyons was a good friend. Fay, of course, really kind of didn't want to have anything to do with him. But Clyde was very appreciative of what Fay had done for him. So the word went out around town, you don't mess with Fay Lyons because Clyde Barrow is his bodyguard. So Fay had been more or less bulletproof as long as Clyde was around. But now Clyde was gone. Fay got a call from Benny Binion. Now, Benny Binion was a Dallas gambler and mob boss. He ran things in Dallas. And Fay has been taking a pretty good cut of the gambling money that's going on in Dallas. And Benny Binion told Fay Lyons in a telephone conversation, he said, Fay, Dallas is just not big enough for two gamblers like you and me. He said, one of us has got to leave. Fay said, Benny, I'll come by and help you pack your bag. That was not a good thing to say to Benny Binion. So nothing happened right away, but Fay said it was about a week or 10 days later. He said Raymond Hamilton told me about it. Said, I liked Raymond. Said, he was cool. Said he carried a gun. Let me go back and give you this little facet of the story. Remember the man that kept sitting down by Fay and would take his chips and drink all the time? Well, it was in the summertime. It was in August. And it was real hot. And Fay'd been working there in the county jail, and he went across the street to a drugstore. He said they had a new drink out called a Dr. Pepper. That you'd get a glass of ice, and they'd pour some syrup in there, and then they'd squirt carbonated water on top of it. Said it was delicious, especially in the summertime. So I was sitting in there drinking my Dr. Pepper, and in walks this man who has always been sitting down beside me taking my chips. And he's got on judge's robes. His name is Judge O'Rourke. So he starts to sit down by Fay, and Fay stands up and says, Judge, do you have any idea how much money you owe me? Judge looked at Fay and said, Fay, I don't owe you a damn thing. And he said, I'll tell you why. Two men are standing there nose to nose. The judge tells him, he says, Fay, you're a gambler, you're carrying a gun. He said, one of these days, you're either going to get shot or you're going to shoot someone. And if you shoot someone, you're going to come up before my bench. Hey, how much do you think I owe you? I said, well, Judge, I don't guess you owe me anything. The two men sat down and finished their drink. Now, Clyde Barrow, who was supposed to be Fay Lyons' bodyguard, has just been killed. And he gets this phone call from Benny Binion. One of us is going to have to leave town. Fay doesn't leave. And it's about a week or 10 days later, Raymond Hamilton tells him about this $5 poker game being held in a warehouse on Saturday night. These long haul truckers come in and they got some pretty good pay, and it's an interesting game. Fay goes there, and of course they're playing with his cards. So he's doing all right. He said there were two men there that I'd never seen before. He said they were dark complected, and I didn't think anything about it one way or the other. They were no better poker players, no worse than anyone else. And said finally the game broke up, and I left with most of the money. Said I noticed when I left, these two men followed me. And as I approached my shiny Packard automobile, I could see the reflection in that car. And these men started reaching in their coat like they had a gun. Well, I figured they did. So I ducked down behind the hood of my car and got my pistol out. Well, they started shooting. He said, Jimmy, they couldn't shoot for sour apples, but said they're breaking out all the windows in my Packard, and that really irritated me. Said about that time, one of those bullets ricocheted off the windshield and went right by my ear, and I thought, well, boy, they're not kidding. So I drilled one of them, and he went down. Said the other one was throwing down on me pretty close, so I ducked down under the car, and I could see his foot, and I shot him in the foot. Said I came up, and he's hopping around like a rooster on one leg, but he's waving that pistol, so I got another bullet in him, and he went down. So now big pools of blood are coming out from around both these guys, and now I'm really scared. I'm afraid I'd kill someone. So I go into the warehouse, ask to borrow their phone, and I call my friend Bill Decker on the phone and tell him what's happened. Bill said, Fay, stay right there, don't touch anything, that I'll be down, so we'll sort this out. So Decker shows up, he picks up the guns that the bad guys had, calls an ambulance, says, Fay, you're gonna have to spend the night in jail, so we'll get you in front of the grand jury in the morning. So Fay comes, he waits, gets in front of the grand jury about 10 o'clock the next morning. And of course, you know who the judge is, Judge O'Rourke. And he's sitting there, and he lectures Fay about the amenities of the new electric chair versus hanging. He carries this on for about 15 minutes, and then, of course, they hear the case. He pays no bill. It's self-defense. There's no two ways around it. But before he can leave the courtroom, his friend Bill Decker tells him, he says, "Babe, your mother is on the phone in my office." Said, "Go to my office." So Fay goes to the office, and his mother tells him to come right straight home. She said, "Don't go to your apartment. Don't stop off to talk to anyone. You come right straight home." Well, Fay's mother was the boss of the family. So he went right straight home, just like Mom told him. They said, "Jimmy, she talked to me for about half a day." He said, "I don't think she came up for a breath of air, but the main thing, what she was telling me, was you've got to quit your sinful ways. You've got to give all the money that you have to the Baptist church here in Rockwall. You've got to sell your car and give that money to the church. And you've got to come home and help your father run this farm." They said, "I was upset." Said, "I was afraid one or maybe both those men would die." Said, "I felt terrible. So I agreed to do this, but I asked Mama," I said, "Mama, can I keep my car?" She said, "Okay, you can keep the car." So Fay, at the ripe old age of about 21, comes back to the farm. He goes to the Baptist church there, he gives them his money, does everything Mama asked him to. He's still got his car, and he's working with Dad, and he's making $1 a day or something. But anyway, he meets this young lady there, and her name is Gay. So it's Fay and Gay. And he's dating Gay, and her last name is Myers. Now, Fay, if you can imagine, is over 6 feet tall, probably about 6'2". He's a lanky boy. And he brings Gay home one Sunday afternoon after church. They'd had a Coke and do what kids do when they get together. There was 3 or 4 of them. And he'd bring her home, and Mr. Byers comes out and starts lecturing Fay. He says, "I don't want you to date my daughter anymore. Said, "Your character is just not good enough for my family." Well, Fay looks down at Mr. Byers and says, "Mr. Byers, back during Prohibition, you were Rose Hill's #1 bootlegger, and your reputation is not too pristine. Now I'm going to ask Fay's mother if I can marry her." Well, Gay's mother. Now Fay knew that Gay's mother and his mother were good friends, and this would not be a hard sell. So they did get married. Fay did quite well as a businessman. He settled down, and he ran the gin there in Rose Hill for a while. He finally wound up as an agent for a company called Humble Oil Company. Today it's ExxonMobil. And he was on the city council there in Garland, and a very respected member of the church. Fay Lyons died March 3rd, 2009. His nephew, Jimmy Lyons, who was a classmate of mine, came to me and said, "Jim," said, "Fay asked you to be one of his pallbearers." And of course I was. You see, I was raised on the farm right next to Fay. And they had 600 acres. They raised cotton. They lived in a big 2-story wooden white antebellum type home. And Fay's main hobby was pistols. He loved pistols. And the boys from Rose Hill, we'd gather around there, and Fay was always had the latest kind of pistols, and he'd let us use them. And what we'd do, he would throw something out there in that little lake behind their house, and we'd shoot at it. And when we'd shoot at it, the water would splash how far you're missing it, so you could correct your sight picture. And Fay had shot pistols so much you could throw whatever the target was in the air, and he'd hit it in the air. So those 2 guys that came down here from wherever to take him out just didn't know who they was picking on. And they wound up in the hospital. Fay told me, he said, "Jimmy," he said, "there's no doubt in my mind." He said, "That was Murder Incorporated." He said, "Benny Binion got on the phone, ordered a couple of guys from out of town to come down here and take me out because I didn't do what he told me to do." But anyway, that's the story of Fay Lyons, and you've also got the story of Bonnie Parker. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer for you.
Is there a relationship between the O'Rourke of then and the one who's running for president now?
Between whose gang?
Beto.
Ada O'Rourke.
Oh, no, they're not, there's no connection.
Because I think his father was also a judge.
Well, now, you may have something there, but we haven't investigated that.
Yeah.
With all your books, did this take longer to research, or was it easier, or what?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Oh, this is one of the books that I'm asking. Was it harder to do this book? Did it take more research?
This book, Fay Lyons was in his final years. His nephew Jimmy told me, he said, you better go by and see Uncle Fay. He's not gonna be here much longer, and he's got a great story to tell. So I went there with the recorder and recorded his stories. Quite often, he told me the same story twice, but that's where it came from. And it certainly is a facet of Bonnie and Clyde's history that, well, it's interesting, and it comes together. Incidentally, this is the only book that has both the family tree of Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker. Oh, and the books are $20 each for hardbacks.
Well, it was fascinating. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you. Your mind just must be whirling all the time to think of things to research.
Yeah.
What is your next project?
I will complete a book by July 4th. That's the deadline that my publisher would give me. Called Warren Diamond, Dallas Godfather. Warren Diamond was a savant genius. Savant is a French word meaning mathematical, and the doctors always use it. I guess they like to use words we don't understand. But anyway, he was a mathematical genius, and the game of craps right after the Civil War was sweeping the nation, just like canasta or besta or bridge. And because he was very alert mentally, he understood that game and was able to win constantly. He got Dallas organized, and he wound up having a casino in every hotel in Dallas. By 1923, Dallas was described as a little Monte Carlo and a Trinity. Within a 2-mile square area, there were 22 casinos. And it was the only place in the Northern Hemisphere where you get a no-limit bet. That's Dallas, Texas. A story that's never been told, and boy, am I excited about it.
I'm sorry, where you could get a what?
No-limit bet.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, no limit.
They also said you can get a drink, you can gamble, and you can get laid.
How did he survive though with the mafia?
Well, the mafia wasn't really organized until Al Capone went to jail in 1931.
Oh,
And Warren Diamond is down here putting things together during the gay 90s and roaring 20s.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I saw the Highwayman on Netflix just a few nights ago. How close to the truth is that? Have you seen that film?
Yes.
How close to the truth was it, as far as your researchers go?
Well, one thing that really stuck out like a sore thumb, they said Clyde was dressing up like a woman. That was, you don't have two women coming in robbing the bank. You want to keep a low profile. It was Bonnie dressing up like a man.
Yeah.
Now, why they did that, I don't know. But who can predict what Hollywood's going to do?
Yeah, screw things up.
So you're saying that were there other discrepancies that you noticed? I mean, because actually it was the story of how he, tracked
Yes.
down, went through endless.
Well, the other discrepancy was they had Bonnie shooting wounded policemen in the face on 2 different occasions. She only did it once. Oh, and one of the troopers that she shot was to be married within the week, and his fiance wore her wedding dress to the funeral.
That's kind of sick.
That is.
Yeah.
So is there any accounting of what was the value of the total, robberies that Bonnie and Clyde did? Was it in the millions or what, tens of millions?
Well, they did so many robberies that when they weren't identified, they got away with. Of course, at the very outset, Bonnie was going in as a woman, and they realized that was getting them publicity they really didn't want.
So how close was the Faye Dunaway film and the Warren Beatty film back in the 60s? How close was that? That was kind of glamorized.
Faye Dunaway's film was very sympathetic to Bonnie, and they were telling a love story, and it just made me want to perk. But this one, The Highwayman, that's the way it was.
Okay.
You seem to spend a lot of time on organized crime. What's your reason for that versus other subjects you could have pursued?
Organized crime in Dallas has never been written about, and it happened. And I was very fortunate. Many of the Dallas County deputy sheriffs and I were friends. I'm a life member of the National Rifle Association, and our common denominator were gun enthusiasts. And they told me about Bill Decker, before there were computers, of course, said that he had a jail cell with a desk in it, scissors and paste, and that they got a trustee. Now remember, the trustee is a prisoner that you can trust. He hadn't done anything mean, just some mischievous theft probably, but they get a trustee that could read. Bill Decker would. At that time, Dallas had 3 newspapers, and they would bring these newspapers in, and the trustees there they had a wallpaper sample book, and the trustee's job was to cut out anything in the paper pertaining to crime and paste it in this wallpaper scrapbook. There were 14 of those books, but nobody knew where they were, what happened to them. All the deputies, we were trying to find the books. Well, I was doing some research anyway up on the 7th floor of the library, which is the history section. And I was complaining, and the lady there that ran the 7th floor said, "Well, Mr. Gatewood, we have those books." I said, "Really? Where?" I said, "Well, they're back in the archives." I said, "Well, may I see them?" She said, "No." She said, "They're very old and the paper is crumbly, but we have it all in microfilm." So I tapped into that, and that was just a path of what the criminal activity was in Dallas. Nobody's ever written about it. It's land or fallow. I mean, we got our good side and our bad side, and well, it's not all bad. There's heroes in there. Boy, that Captain Will Fritz was something else. And Bill Decker was he was more like a chaplain. When he first got that job as a deputy, he had worked as a county clerk in the judge's office for 2 years, and he understood and knew all about the laws and about murders and theft and embezzlement. He had the language, the vocabulary of an attorney and experience. So if you were put in jail, he ran the roster every day, and he came by and visited everybody that was put in jail. And when he'd come to your cell, first thing he'd ask is, "You do cigarettes?" Because so many people smoke and they're cut off from cigarettes, they're crawling a wall. If you smoked, he'd give you a package of cigarettes. Then he would ask you, "Does your family know you're here?" And of course, they either did or didn't, and if they didn't, he'd get the word out to them. Then he'd ask you, "What are you in for?" And he would identify and remove a lot of the unknown factors that you're worried about. So he made an awful lot of friends as time went by. By the time he was elected sheriff, he had more snitches probably than anybody in the law enforcement business. And if there was a murder or theft or something in your part of town, he'd get you on the phone and ask you what you know about it. He solved a lot of crime just over the telephone. And we got another book coming about Bill Decker, but that's on downstream. Incidentally, all my books are written with a screenplay spine, so that if they ever want to make a film on one of these, it's there for them. And I was so pleased this show that you mentioned, The Highwayman, they use the term the devil's back porch, and that's my label that I put on West Dallas. So I'm over there. At least they read my book.
But you didn't get the credit for that.
Oh, no, I didn't get any credit.
Okay. Throughout history, would you liken her to somebody in the past? Or was she such a unique individual? Bonnie.
Who are we talking about?
Oh, Bonnie.
Bonnie
Yes.
Parker.
Hey, Parker.
She was so ruthless.
Ma Barker was pretty tough. She had 3 sons. She didn't kill anybody. She didn't actually get into it. She just directed her son. Bonnie was, she was vicious. But to go out there and shoot those dying troopers in the face with a shotgun, that's only to elevate her stature.
So she was more than a sociopath, more of a psychopath. Yes.
She was a bad case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to the baby?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's a good question. That baby will be 90 years old in September, if she's still alive. Now, the lady, of course, her name is different now. It's no longer Parker, but it's Williams. She came to the 2009. Every year they have this Bonnie and Clyde reenactment, a shootout in Gibson, Louisiana, where it actually happened. Historians come in from all over the country, and we sit around and we eat that gumbo and drink beer and tell stories. Anyway, the daughter showed up. And what happened, Bonnie, realizing that she was pregnant, Faye Lyons comes home from work one day. When Clyde was put in jail, Faye said, well, Bonnie, I'll take care of you, I'll sponsor you. And then she hadn't been there very long, she realized she was pregnant. Faye comes in from work, she's crying, he asked her what's wrong, and she said, well, I'm gonna have a baby. And he said, well, is it Clyde's baby? And she said, it couldn't be anybody else's. And they said, well, why don't you write him a letter? And she said, no, I want to go see him. Would you drive me to Huntsville and talk to him? So they drove to Huntsville, and the visit didn't last very long. They fought. And what Faye learned coming back to Dallas in the car was that Clyde was already married. Well, Bonnie was already married too. She never got a divorce from Roy Thornton. So here's this embryo suspended between 2 people married to someone else. Clyde told her to see the gypsy. Now the gypsy is a fellow by the name of Tony Galvez, who lived here in Dallas. He was king of the gypsy tribe, and his wife Rose was capable of giving abortions. So Clyde has told Bonnie to take this as one of her options, and she grapples with that. Faye tells her, he said, well, Bonnie said, I'll marry you, we'll give the child a name, I'll support you. He swept away all financial problems because he did care for her. Well, she chose not to have the abortion, and she went and lived with the gypsy. They delivered the child, and she took the position of, I'm going to be the child's aunt. And they named the child Rose. And we found people over at Sunset High School that remembered her, and then someone out at Love Field said she took flying lessons, and then the last we heard of her, she was in California. And then she shows up at this Bonnie and Clyde shootout. And she tells her story. She's married, she has no children. But like I say, if she's still alive, she'd be 90 in September.
I have a question.
You're talking about just studying crime in general in Dallas. I remember years ago that I read that the governor of Florida hired a special police force to drive the mafia out of Miami, and that they moved their financial operations to Dallas, basically in the Republic National Bank, I believe it was. Do you know anything about that?
All I know about Miami and Mafia is that Jack Ruby had half interest in a brothel out there, and he got that when he got, helped get Travis Seconti out of Cuba. That was part of his reward.
And one other question. Are you familiar at all with the Dallas Police Narcotics Division being involved in the heroin trade?
Being involved in heroin trade?
Yes. Well, I'll give you some information on that.
So have you checked out your family history and traced it far, far back? Your own family?
Family history goes back to the 16th century.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, the patriarch of the Gatewood family, John Gatewood, was a noble in King Charles's court. And of course, King Charles was Catholic. And Cromwell, of course, is not Catholic. And there's a civil war, it's a religious war, and Cromwell wins. And he comes to Charles and he says, if you will renounce Catholicism and sanction the Presbyterian religion, we won't cut your head off. Well, Charles didn't, and they cut his head off.
oh, yeah.
John Gatewood was one of his nobles, and he was on a hit list. They were going to cut his head off too, but he left.
Did he go to France?
Pardon?
Say, did he go to France?
No, he came to
Oh, he came to
Charleston, South Carolina.
That was a favorite spot where Catholic came right off to France, actually.
That's Washington a long time ago.
Do you teach at Ridgeland College?
Yes.
How can we find your schedule? Are you teaching in the summer? No.
Well,
Beverly used
I'm
to
on
make
a hiatus right now. I just lost my wife.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So when do you go back?
I have no idea when they call me, I guess.
So, okay. I just wondered, I'd take a class with you. Do you do non-credit?
Pardon?
Do you do non-credit?
Yes, non-credit.
Oh, good, good. That's interesting.
Yes, do you only teach the sordid side of the Dallas history, or you might know Steve Butler, one of my friends, who also teaches at Richland, but it's more contemporary history, I think. So how far do you go back? Is it just Dallas history you teach, or American history, or what in general?
You're talking about my family?
Yes, I mean, no, your courses that you teach in Richland.
Oh, it's Dallas history.
Oh, just Dallas history.
Just Dallas history.
I'm saying, is
The
it?
only place you can get it.
Yeah. Is it only the sordid part of Dallas history, or?
I'm interested.
I mean, yeah, because I had some note. I mean, like Harry Hines and other people, like Thornton Expressway. Well, they're all you see all these names, and you wonder who these people were actually. So I understand that Harry Hines was a really upstanding, very conservative gentleman, and his street is quite the opposite. It's quite sordid.
Well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to sit with my books. They're $20 each. They make a great present because you can read them and then pass them on. But there's a limit of 5 books. That's all you can buy.
Well, now it's your turn to talk, so anybody has any comments they want to make, either for or against what the speaker had to say, now is the time to do it. You got 5 minutes.
Well, just in case you presume that gambling is dead in our modern world here, I have a tale to tell on my violin instructor. He kind of goes back and forth between Dallas and Los Angeles. He's got family in both places, and so he is out in he's out in LA, and there is a particular Ferrari club out there among some of the rich LA residents, where they all have Ferraris, and so he challenged the Ferrari club to a match. And I don't know all the details about the match, but they, I guess, were using the Malibu Raceway. And he bet them that he could beat them. And so, you know, they're all lined up there on the raceway, and I guess some guy pulls up on this ridiculous motorcycle who's got this, you know, leather cap on and big goggles and everything, and he's got a walkie. Meanwhile, my violin instructor was diving in his Cessna 150. And right when he pulls out of the dive, then the guy triggers the race, and they all start off, and my violin instructor's Cessna 150 beat the Ferraris. And he collected, I think he said 12 grand. 12 grand for a little short wager, and I thought you all would find that fascinating. So.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of curious that the people of note who turn into heroes, you know, these criminal elite, so to speak, and are fated by the crowd. In England, we had a similar situation in the '60s when the Cray twins, who were from East London. East London is a pretty rough area. In fact, I was a post office vanguard in Hoxton in East London. When Vanguard used to guard the mail collection trucks. We used to go around and collect the mail city, and I would sit there with my armband and try to protect the mail collector. But anyway, in Hoxton, these Cray twins were involved in murders and everything else, but they became famous, and they were hobnobbing with cabinet ministers and so on. And there's a film about the Crays actually that is well. But it just shows you how these notorious people actually become idolized by the by the people at large. It is quite curious that how crime seems to be fascinating. And anyway, I thought it was curious to see that. But now, mind you, you can make a good living out of, I suppose, crime reporting as well. Yeah.
I guess I'm the last one standing. No one else has anything else to say about it. Anyway, I want to thank our speaker for doing a great job here tonight. He's a real, how would you say it? He's a relic. He's something that we're very pleased to have. I mean, think about it. Where else have we got a history professor that grew up in the same town and knows the history better than anyone else? So it's a real treat, and it goes down the annals of history. So anyway, I got to give this back to our speaker. He gets the last word here tonight. Mr. Speaker.
He's gone to his table.
Yeah.
You go to his table.
Yeah, you get the last word. You get to sum this thing up. You get to,
Well, I don't know if it's something, but it's such a common, yes, not sure it should be free.
As a last word, what I would like to say is how proud I am of the people of Dallas who banded together and made the Dallas County Assassination Review Board. Put together facts. The attorney Charles Tesper said we're not going to put anything in that book that I can't defend in court. And proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone shooter and that it was a mafia conspiracy. are my last words.
Didn't say buy my books too.
Well, that's it for tonight. They kick us out of here at 10:30. Our speaker's gonna be back there. He has some books if you'd like to buy one of his books. And he has them with him, so. Anyway, that's it for tonight. See you all next week, hopefully. And the rest of it's yours, so there you are.